I still remember the moment everything shifted, not with a scream, not with a dramatic scene, but with a quiet sentence spoken just loud enough to cut through me. Don't give her the baby. She's not steady anymore. I pretended not to hear it, but I did. And something inside me cracked. It happened on a warm Sunday afternoon in early spring, in a small coastal town where the air always smelled faintly of salt and blooming jasmine. The kind of place where people smiled too easily and secrets traveled faster than the wind. My daughter, Amelia, had invited me to a small gathering at her house. Just family, she said over the phone. Nothing big. I hadn't been to her home in months. There was always a reason. Too busy. Too tired. The baby isn't sleeping well. Maybe next week. But this time I was invited. And I held on to that invitation like it meant something more. Her house sat on a quiet street lined with white fences and trimmed hedges. Perfect. Almost too perfect. The kind of place that looked like a photograph in a magazine. I stood outside for a moment, smoothing my coat, steadying my breath. I had brought a small gift. A knitted blanket. Soft blue, with tiny stitched stars. I made it myself over the past few weeks, imagining wrapping it around my grandson, Leo. I had only seen him twice since he was born. Twice. I rang the doorbell. Voices echoed inside. Laughter. Music. The faint clinking of glasses. The door opened, and Amelia stood there, polished, composed, beautiful as always. Not a hair out of place. Mom, she said, surprised, as if she hadn't expected me to actually come. I brought something for Leo, I said, lifting the bag slightly. She stepped aside.
Come in.
The house was full. Not just family. There were friends, neighbors, people I didn't recognize. Everyone gathered in clusters, holding drinks, talking loudly, living comfortably in a space I felt like I no longer belonged to. And there he was. In someone else's arms. A woman I didn't know was bouncing him gently, cooing at him as if she had known him forever. My heart tightened, but I smiled anyway. I moved closer, slowly, carefully. He's gotten so big, I said softly. Amelia barely looked at me. Yeah, he's growing fast. I reached out, instinctively. May I hold him? And that's when it happened. Amelia hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Then she turned to the woman holding Leo. Could you keep him for a bit? She asked. He's been fussy today. The woman nodded, adjusting him comfortably. My hands stayed suspended in the air for a moment before I slowly lowered them. Oh, I said. Of course. I tried to laugh it off, as if it didn't matter. As if I hadn't been waiting for this moment for months. I stepped back, clutching the gift bag a little tighter than I should have. Mom, can you put that somewhere? Amelia said, already turning away. I nodded. Sure. I walked into the kitchen, placed the bag on the counter, and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. The noise from the living room blurred into a distant hum. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe she was just busy. Maybe the baby really was fussy. Maybe I was imagining things. But then I heard it. From the hallway. Amelia's voice. Quiet. Casual. She gets nervous holding him. I don't want to risk it. Another voice responded, laughing softly. You're probably right. Better safe than sorry. My chest tightened. I wasn't nervous. My hands didn't shake. I had raised Amelia by myself after her father died. I worked 2 jobs, cooked every meal, helped with homework, stayed up through fevers and nightmares. I had carried her through life with steady hands. And now I wasn't trusted to hold my own grandson. I stayed in that kitchen longer than necessary, pretending to rearrange things that didn't need rearranging. When I finally went back, Leo was being passed around again. Everyone got a turn. Everyone but me. I tried again later, catching Amelia alone near the window. Maybe now, I asked gently. Just for a minute. She sighed, not loudly, but enough. Mom, he's about to nap. I won't wake him. He's sensitive. I nodded. Of course he was. Everything had a reason, a justification, a quiet way of saying no without actually saying it. By the time the sun began to set, I had stopped asking. I sat in a corner chair, watching the room move around me like I was invisible. Conversations flowed, laughter rose and fell, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I wasn't part of this world anymore. I was just present. When I finally stood to leave, no one noticed at first. I found Amelia near the door. I'm heading out, I said. She glanced at the clock. Already? Yes. She gave me a quick hug, light, distant. Thanks for coming. I left the blanket in the kitchen. I added. Oh, okay. I'll look at it later. Later. I smiled. Take care. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, closing the door behind me. The sound of laughter continued inside, muffled now, like something I was no longer allowed to hear clearly. I walked to my car slowly, each step heavier than the last. When I sat down behind the wheel, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel. Still. Steady. Perfectly steady. And for the first time, I allowed myself to think something I had avoided for years. Maybe it wasn't about the baby. Maybe it was about me. Maybe somewhere along the way, I had stopped being a mother and become something else. Something convenient. Something optional. Something easy to set aside. I started the car and drove home in silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. And by morning, I had made a decision. I didn't make the decision in a moment of anger. That would have been easier to dismiss later, easier to regret. No, what I felt the next morning was something far more dangerous: clarity. The kind that settles in quietly and refuses to leave. My house was still, filled with the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Morning light slipped through the curtains, landing gently across the kitchen table where my checkbook sat open, exactly where I had left it the night before. I stared at it for a long time. Every number, every entry, every signature told a story I had never questioned before. Monthly transfers. Quiet support. No discussion. No boundaries. Just giving. At first, it had felt natural. Amelia and Daniel, her husband, had wanted a bigger home when she got pregnant. Just until we get settled, she had said. It would really help us. And I had agreed, without hesitation. I told myself it was temporary, that it was what any mother would do. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of steady payments. 3 years of watching my savings shrink while their life expanded. 3 years of being helpful but not included. And yesterday, I wasn't even trusted to hold my grandson. I let out a slow breath and reached for the phone. The bank answered after 2 rings. Good morning. How can I assist you? Yes, I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. I'd like to cancel the recurring transfer. There was a brief pause as the representative pulled up my account. Of course. May I ask which one? I gave the details. Another pause, longer this time. Are you sure you want to cancel this payment? I looked down at my hands resting on the table. Still steady. Yes, I said. I'm sure. It will take effect immediately. Thank you. I hung up, and just like that, something shifted. Not outside. Not yet. But inside me. For the first time in years, I felt like I had done something for myself. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of quiet self-respect. The silence in the house felt different now. Not empty. Clear. That evening the phone rang. I knew it was her before I even looked. Amelia. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then it stopped. A minute later, it rang again. I didn't answer. By the 3rd call, I picked up, not because I felt guilty, but because I knew avoiding it wouldn't change anything. Mom. Amelia's voice came sharp and fast, skipping any form of greeting. What's going on with the payment? I leaned back in my chair. Hello to you too. This isn't funny, she snapped. The bank called Daniel at work. The transfer didn't go through. I canceled it. Silence. Then, you what? I canceled the payment. I repeated, evenly. Why would you do that? Her tone shifted from confusion to irritation. Is this some kind of mistake?
No.
Another pause, heavier this time. Is this about yesterday? She asked finally. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to say it right. It's not just about yesterday, I said. But yes, that was part of it. Amelia let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You're seriously doing this because I didn't let you hold Leo for 5 minutes? It wasn't 5 minutes, I said quietly. It was everything that came with it. Oh my God, Mom, you're overreacting. Maybe I would have agreed with her once. Maybe I would have apologized. But something in me had changed. No, I said. I'm not. Her voice sharpened. So, what, you're just going to stop helping us? Just like that. I'm not stopping caring, I replied. I'm just not going to keep pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. That doesn't make any sense, she said quickly. Those are two completely different things. Are they? Yes, she snapped. This is financial support, not whatever emotional thing you're turning it into. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. Exactly what I had begun to understand. To her, it was just money. To me, it had been something else entirely. Amelia, I said, keeping my voice steady, when was the last time you called me just to talk? She hesitated. That's not fair, she said. When was the last time you invited me over without needing something? I have a baby, she shot back. My life is busy. I know, I said. I remember. That seemed to catch her off guard. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then, quieter but still defensive, so this is punishment? No, I said. This is a boundary. A boundary? She repeated, as if the word itself annoyed her. You're cutting off support and calling it a boundary? Yes. There was a long silence on the line. I could almost hear her thinking, calculating, trying to decide how to approach this. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. Softer. Careful. Mom, we're counting on that money. I didn't respond right away. Because part of me still wanted to give in. Still wanted to fix everything. Still wanted to be needed. But I remembered the way she had turned away from me yesterday. The way my hands had hovered in the air, empty. And I held my ground. You're capable of managing your own life, I said gently. You and Daniel both. It's not that simple, she insisted. We have a house, expenses. So did I interrupted softly. After your father died. That stopped her. Completely. The silence that followed wasn't irritated or defensive. It was uncomfortable. I was younger than you are now, I continued. With less support, fewer options. And I made it work. That's different, she muttered. Yes, I said. It is. She didn't ask how. She didn't want to know. Because that conversation would require something she wasn't ready to give. Understanding. So what now? She asked finally, her voice colder again. You're just done helping us? I'm done being treated like I don't matter, I said. You're being dramatic. Am I? Yes. I let out a quiet breath. Then maybe this will help you see things differently. Another pause. Then she said something that hit harder than anything before. Fine, she said. But don't expect to be involved if you're not willing to support us. I knew exactly what she meant. My grandson. The one I wasn't allowed to hold. The threat hung in the air between us. Heavy. Deliberate. I swallowed the ache rising in my chest. That's your choice, I said calmly. You're really okay with that? She challenged. No. I wasn't. Not even close. But I understood something now that I hadn't before. If I gave in, nothing would change. I'm okay with choosing self-respect, I said. She didn't respond. For a moment, I thought she might say something else, something real. But instead, unbelievable, she muttered. And the line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. The house was quiet again. But this time, the silence felt heavier. Not empty. Not peaceful. Just real. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The decision had been made. The line had been drawn. And for better or worse, there was no going back. The silence didn't break the next day, or the day after,
Or the week after that.
At first, I kept expecting it. The phone ringing, Amelia's name lighting up the screen, her voice softer this time, maybe even apologetic. I told myself she just needed time, that she was upset, that she would come around. But time passed, and nothing came. No calls, no messages, no accidental check-ins or polite excuses, just absence. It settled into my life slowly, like dust you don't notice until everything feels dimmer. I tried to keep busy. I told myself that was the healthiest thing to do. I started waking up earlier, making proper breakfasts instead of just coffee, forcing myself into routines I had neglected for years. I spent more time in my garden, trimming, planting, rearranging things that didn't really need rearranging, but it gave my hands something to do when my mind wouldn't stay quiet. Because when it was quiet, I thought about him. I wondered if he had started recognizing faces yet. If he laughed easily. If he cried at night. If he had Amelia's eyes or Daniel's stubborn expression. I wondered if he would ever know me. That thought lingered the longest. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the call, I was in the backyard, kneeling beside a row of roses, carefully cutting away dead stems. The air was warm, the kind of early summer day that should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt still.
Too still.
Then I heard it. A car pulling into the driveway.
Fast.
Too fast. I stood up slowly, brushing dirt from my hands, already knowing who it was before I even turned around. Amelia didn't knock. She pushed the gate open and walked straight toward me, her steps sharp, her expression tight with frustration. "Mom," she said, not as a greeting, but as an accusation. I straightened, pulling off my gardening gloves. "Hello, Amelia." "What is going on?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked at her calmly. Yes. She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was nothing amused about it. The mortgage payment bounced. The bank called Daniel at work. Do you know how humiliating that was?
Humiliating.
The word hung between us, heavy and familiar. I tilted my head slightly. "Do you?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What? Do you know what humiliating feels like?" I asked quietly. Her expression hardened. "Don't do that. Don't turn this around." "I'm not turning anything," I said. "I'm asking you a question." She crossed her arms, defensive now. "This is not the same thing."
No.
I held her gaze. Standing in your own daughter's home, being treated like you can't be trusted to hold a child, hearing her say you're not capable in front of other people. I paused. "That didn't feel humiliating to you?" She looked away for a second, just a second, but it was enough for me to notice. "I was being careful," she said quickly. "He's a baby." "And I raised one," I replied. "That's different." "It is," I said. Back then I mattered. That landed. I could see it in the way her posture shifted, the way her shoulders tensed slightly. But instead of softening, she pushed back harder. "So this is revenge," she snapped. "You're risking our home over your pride?" "It's not about pride," I said. "It's about respect." "Oh my God," she muttered, pacing now. "You're acting like I've done something terrible." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You have," I said simply.
She stopped.
For a moment, the anger on her face flickered into something else, uncertainty, maybe even guilt. But it didn't last. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said. "You always do this. You make things bigger than they are." I let out a slow breath. "No, Amelia," I said. "I've spent years making things smaller than they are." That made her pause again. Longer this time. But she shook her head, dismissing it.
"Fine," she said.
"Let's say you're right. Let's say I hurt your feelings. That doesn't justify this. It justifies me stopping something that shouldn't have become normal." "You offered to help," she insisted. You said you wanted to. I did, I said. Because I love you. Then act like it. I am, I replied. She laughed again, sharper now. This isn't love, Mom. This is control. I shook my head slowly.
No.
What we had before, that wasn't love either. That was dependency. Her eyes narrowed. We are not dependent on you. Aren't you? She hesitated. And there it was again. That crack. Small, but real. We just needed support, she said, quieter now. For how long? I asked. She didn't answer. How long was I supposed to keep paying? I continued. Another year? 5, 10. That's not the point. It is the point. She turned away, running a hand through her hair, clearly frustrated. You don't understand how expensive things are right now, she said. We have responsibilities. I know exactly what responsibilities look like, I said. I lived them. You didn't live like we do, she shot back. I almost smiled. No, I said. I didn't. Because I couldn't afford to. Silence stretched between us. Not empty this time. Heavy.
Real.
Then she said it. What about Leo? I felt it immediately, the shift. The direction of the conversation. What about him? I asked carefully. Don't you care about him? She said. Your grandson. I did. More than she knew. More than I was willing to show in that moment. I care about him very much, I said. Then how can you do this? She demanded. How can you risk his stability? I looked at her steadily. Providing money is not the same as being a grandmother. She stared at me as if she hadn't expected that answer. We're doing this for him, she insisted. No, I said gently. You're doing this for your lifestyle. Her face flushed. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. You have a beautiful home, 2 cars, everything you need. You're not struggling, Amelia. You're just used to more.
She didn't respond.
Because she couldn't. So what now? She asked finally, her voice colder again. You're just cutting us off? I'm stepping back, I said. That's the same thing.
No, irraplia.
It's not. She shook her head, backing away slightly. I can't believe this, she said. After everything, you're choosing money over your family. I held her gaze. No, I said quietly. I'm choosing myself. That was the moment something shifted between us. Not loudly, not dramatically, but definitively. Her expression changed, not just anger now, but something harder, colder.
Fine, she said.
Just one word, but it carried weight. Have it your way. She turned, walking back toward the gate, without another glance. Then she stopped, just before leaving. And, without turning around, she said, Don't expect to see Leo anytime soon. The words hit exactly where she intended.
Deep.
Precise. But I didn't move. That's your choice, I said. She hesitated for half a second. Then she walked away. The gate clicked shut behind her. And just like that, the silence returned. Only this time, it felt different. The silence after that day wasn't just absence anymore. It became something solid, something that lived in the house with me, moved through the rooms, sat across from me at the table, followed me into sleep, and woke up with me in the morning. Weeks passed, then months, and not once did Amelia call. Not once did I hear Leo's name spoken out loud except in my own thoughts. At first, I kept checking my phone out of habit, glancing at it every hour as if I might have missed something, but eventually even that faded. You can only wait for so long before waiting starts to feel foolish. I filled my days the only way I knew how, by keeping my hands busy and my mind occupied enough not to collapse under its own weight. I joined a small community center I had ignored for years, signed up for classes I never thought I would take, forced myself into conversations with people who didn't know anything about my life, and in that strange anonymity, I found a kind of relief. No one expected anything from me there. No one needed money. No one asked for help. No one measured my worth by what I could provide. I was just Charlotte, not someone's mother, not someone's solution,
Just me.
It felt unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit yet. But slowly, something began to change. I started to breathe differently. I laughed more easily. I even caught myself enjoying small things again. Morning light through the windows, the quiet rhythm of painting during my afternoon art class, the sound of my own footsteps during evening walks. It wasn't happiness, not fully, but it was something steady. Something real. Still, Leo never left my mind. I imagined him growing, learning to crawl, maybe even starting to stand. I wondered if he had a favorite toy, if he cried at night, if he had started saying small sounds that would one day turn into words. I wondered if he would recognize me if he saw me again, or if I had already become a stranger in his life. One afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near the park, a place I had begun to visit regularly, when I overheard a woman at the next table laughing with her friend about her mother watching the baby while she worked. It was such a simple thing, such a normal exchange, but it hit me harder than I expected. Not because I was jealous, at least not entirely, but because it reminded me of what I had almost become. A quiet convenience. A background figure. Someone useful, but not truly present. I finished my coffee and left earlier than planned. That evening, the house felt heavier again, like the walls had shifted closer. I walked from room to room without purpose, touching familiar objects as if they could ground me, until I finally sat down in the living room and allowed myself to feel it fully. The loss, the distance, the uncertainty of not knowing if things would ever change. For a brief moment, I considered calling her. Just picking up the phone, saying something simple, anything that might break the silence. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew exactly how that conversation would go. It wouldn't be about us. It would circle back to money, to expectations, to conditions. And if I gave in now, everything I had fought to rebuild inside myself would collapse. So I stayed where I was. And I let the silence remain. It was nearly 3 months later when everything shifted again. I was in my garden that morning, kneeling beside a patch of newly planted flowers, my hands covered in soil, the sun warm against my back. It was one of those quiet, peaceful moments where nothing feels urgent, nothing feels broken, just a simple, steady existence. I had almost convinced myself that this was enough. Then I heard a car.
Slow this time.
Not rushed, not aggressive. I looked up, wiping my hands on a cloth, and saw a familiar car pulling into the driveway. My heart didn't race. It didn't jump. It tightened. Amelia stepped out of the car. And for a second, I didn't recognize her. Not because she looked different, but because something about her presence had changed. The sharpness I had grown used to was gone. In its place was something heavier. Something worn down. She walked toward me slowly. Not with anger this time, not with purpose, but with hesitation. "Mom," she said.
Just that.
No edge.
No accusation.
I stood up, pulling off my gloves, studying her face. Her eyes were tired, her expression uncertain in a way I had never seen before. "Amelia," I said quietly. For a moment, neither of us moved closer. The distance between us felt larger than the space we were standing in. "I didn't know where else to go," she said finally, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Something in my chest shifted. Not completely, but enough. "What happened?" I asked. She looked down, avoiding my eyes, her hands gripping the edge of her coat as if she needed something to hold on to. "Everything," she said. I waited. She took a breath, shaky, uneven. "Daniel lost his job," she said. 3 weeks ago." The words landed quietly, but heavily. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rush to respond. I just listened. "And things have been," she paused, searching for the right word. "Bad." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. I felt it. That instinct, the one that had lived in me for decades. To fix it, to comfort, to step in and make everything easier. But I stayed still. "Go on," I said gently. She nodded, still not looking at me. "We've been fighting. A A lot. About money, about everything. He's been different. She swallowed. And I don't know how to handle it. The silence stretched between us again. But this time it wasn't cold. It was fragile. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. That was new. Amelia had never said those words to me before. Not like this. Not without defensiveness. Not without control. I took a step closer. Just one. Where is Leo?
I asked.
With his mother-in-law, she said quickly. He's okay. I nodded slowly. Relief and something else, something more complicated, moved through me at the same time. Then she finally looked at me, and I saw it. Not anger, not pride, but something raw. I need help, she said. There it was.
Clear. Honest.
But still complicated. Because I didn't know what kind of help she meant. And I wasn't sure she did either. I held her gaze. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel small.
I didn't feel dismissed.
I felt steady. And I knew this moment, whatever came next, would change everything. I didn't answer her immediately, and that silence, just a few seconds, seemed to stretch longer than anything we had said to each other. Amelia stood there, waiting, her eyes searching my face for something familiar, something predictable, something she could rely on the way she always had. And I realized in that moment that she expected the same outcome as before. Not consciously, maybe not even intentionally, but deeply, instinctively, she expected me to fix it. I didn't move closer this time. What kind of help do you need? I asked calmly. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything before she even spoke. Money, she said quietly, almost as if saying it too loudly would make it worse. We're behind on the mortgage and other things. We need about $12,000 to catch up before the bank takes action. There it was.
Clear. Direct. Familiar.
For a brief moment, everything inside me pulled in two directions. One part of me, the part that had lived most of my life as her safety net, was already calculating, already thinking about accounts, savings, what could be moved, what could be sacrificed.
It would have been so easy.
One transfer, one decision, one solution, and everything would go back to the way it was. But the other part of me, the part that had been growing quietly over the past months, stood still, watching, understanding. And if I give you that money, I said slowly, what happens next? She blinked, caught off guard by the question. What do you mean? I mean exactly that, I replied. Does anything actually change? Between us? Her expression shifted, uncertainty creeping in. Of course it does. I told you. I'm sorry for everything. I know I haven't treated you right. Her words sounded correct. Appropriate. But something about them felt practiced. Not false. But incomplete. And after this is fixed? I continued. After the payments are caught up, after things stabilize, what then? Do we go back to how things were? No, she said quickly. It won't be like that again. How do you know? She didn't answer right away. Because she didn't know. Because neither of us did. I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. Amelia, I need you to understand something. This isn't about refusing to help you. It's about refusing to repeat something that wasn't healthy for either of us. Her face tightened. So you're saying no? I'm saying not like this. Her frustration returned immediately, sharper this time, because it came mixed with desperation. We don't have time for this, Mom. This isn't some emotional lesson, this is real. We could lose the house. I know, I said. Then how can you just stand there and talk about boundaries? She demanded. We're in trouble. And giving you money fixes that permanently? I asked. It fixes it now, she shot back. Exactly. She stared at me, her breathing uneven now, her composure slipping further. This is unbelievable, she said under her breath. You're really going to let this happen? No, I said quietly. I'm not going to let the same pattern continue. Her eyes filled with something. Anger, yes, but also something deeper.
Fear.
So, what? We just fall apart, she asked. You watch it happen? I stepped closer then, not to take over, but to meet her where she stood. No, I said gently. I help you in a way that actually changes something. She shook her head, already rejecting it. We don't need advice, Mom. We need help. I am offering help. Not the kind we need. The kind you're asking for isn't the kind that lasts, I replied. She looked at me as if I were speaking a different language. And maybe I was, because for years I had only spoken one way to her, the language of giving, fixing, providing without question. This was new, for both of us. What are you even suggesting? She asked finally, her voice tired now. I'm suggesting we look at what's actually happening, I said. Not just the emergency, but the reason it exists in the first place. That doesn't matter right now, she insisted. It matters more than anything, I said. Because if we ignore it, we'll be right back here again. She didn't argue immediately, because part of her knew I was right, even if she didn't want to admit it. You and Daniel built a life that depends on more than you can sustain, I continued. And I helped support that. I didn't question it, I didn't set limits, and that was my mistake too. Her expression softened slightly, not in agreement, but in recognition. I won't keep doing that, I said. But I won't abandon you either. She looked at me carefully now. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'll help you rebuild, not maintain something that's already falling apart. She frowned. That's not an answer. It is, I said. It's just not the one you want. Silence again. Heavy but different now. Less like conflict. More like something being forced into the open. You're asking me to give up everything, she said finally.
No, irraplia.
I'm asking you to choose what actually matters. She laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. I've done it before, I said quietly. That made her look at me again. Really look this time. You think I can just start over? She asked. I think you're stronger than you believe, I said. She shook her head slowly. You don't understand what this feels like. I held her gaze. I understand more than you think. For a moment, it seemed like she might ask, might open that door. But instead, she stepped back, retreating, emotionally, physically. I can't do this right now, she said. I nodded. I know. She turned toward the driveway, then stopped halfway. And, without looking at me, she said, I thought you would choose me. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. I felt them, deeply. I am choosing you, I said. She shook her head. No, she said. You're choosing yourself. Yes, I replied.
She didn't respond.
Because there was nothing left to argue. She got into her car, without another word, and drove away. I stood there long after she was gone. The air felt heavier, but something inside me felt anchored. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it didn't break me, because for the first time, I wasn't losing myself to keep someone else. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I doubted my decision. That part, surprisingly, remained steady, but because something deeper had been stirred, something I could no longer ignore. Amelia's last words echoed in my mind over and over again. I thought you would choose me. And the truth was, for most of her life, I had. I had chosen her in ways she never even saw. I had chosen her when I stayed in a job I hated because it was stable. I had chosen her when I gave up opportunities that would have taken me further, simply because they would have taken me away from her. I had chosen her every time I said yes when I should have said no, every time I filled in the gaps, so she wouldn't have to feel discomfort, every time I made things easier instead of making them real. And somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing those choices as sacrifices and started seeing them as normal, expected, required. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me sad, because I had helped build that expectation. Morning came quietly, gray clouds stretching across the sky, the kind of day that feels suspended between something ending and something beginning. I moved through the house slowly, making tea, opening windows, letting in cool air that felt almost too sharp against my skin. I needed clarity, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to sit with everything instead of trying to fix it. Hours passed. Then, sometime in the early afternoon, the phone rang. I stared at it for a moment before answering. "Hello? Mrs. Charlotte?" A voice asked, unfamiliar. "Yes. This is from St. Andrew's Medical Center. Your daughter, Amelia, she's here." Everything inside me went still. "What happened?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "She's physically okay," the woman said gently. "But she admitted herself this morning. Anxiety-related symptoms. She asked for you." I was already grabbing my keys. "I'm on my way." The drive felt longer than it actually was. Every red light, every slow-moving car felt like an obstacle I didn't have time for. My mind raced through possibilities, fears, regrets. All the things I had pushed aside suddenly rushing forward at once. When I finally arrived, the hospital was quiet, almost eerily so. The kind of quiet that forces you to hear your own thoughts more clearly than you want to. A nurse led me down a long hallway, her voice calm, her steps measured, as if this was all routine for her. But for me, nothing about this felt routine. She stopped at a door and gave me a small nod. "She's inside." I took a breath. Then I opened it. Amelia was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence, like the sharp edges of her confidence had been worn down by something heavier than she knew how to carry. "Amelia," I said softly. She looked up, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in her in years. Not control, not defensiveness, just vulnerability. "Mom," she said. Her voice broke slightly on the word. I walked in and sat beside her. Not too close, not too far. Close enough to be there, but not to overwhelm her. "What happened?" I asked gently. She let out a shaky breath. "I couldn't breathe," she said. "I was driving and everything just closed in. My chest, my thoughts, everything. I thought something was seriously wrong. I listened, really listened. I pulled over, but it didn't stop," she continued. "And then I just sat there,
Crying.
I couldn't even explain why." Her hands trembled slightly. "I didn't recognize myself," she whispered. That hit me, because I understood that feeling more than she knew. "I came here because I didn't know what else to do," she said. "And the only person I could think of was you." I didn't speak right away. I just reached out and gently took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "I'm here," I said quietly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something fragile. "Why?" she asked. The question wasn't accusing. It was confused. "After everything," she added. "After how I treated you, why are you still here?" I held her gaze. "Because I'm your mother," I said. And for the first time, those words didn't mean sacrifice. They meant presence.
She broke then.
Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely. Tears slipped down her face as she leaned forward, her shoulders shaking, years of pressure, expectations, and unspoken things finally finding a way out. "I messed everything up," she said through quiet sobs. "The house, Daniel, you everything." I let her cry. Didn't interrupt. Didn't rush to fix it. Just stayed. When she finally calmed down, she looked at me again, exhausted. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. I nodded slowly. "You don't fix everything at once," I said. "You start with what's real." She frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means you stop pretending things are okay when they're not," I said. "It means you stop building your life around what it should look like and start building it around what actually works." She was quiet, absorbing it. "And Daniel?" she asked. "That's something you'll have to face honestly," I replied. "Not for appearances. Not for comfort. For truth." She nodded slowly. "And the house?" I shook my head gently. "A house isn't what makes a home," I said. "You know that." She let out a small, tired breath. "I think I forgot that," she admitted. We sat there in silence for a while. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was steady. What happens now? She asked eventually. I thought about it, not as a solution, but as a beginning. You get better, I said. You take the time you need here. You let yourself slow down. And when you're ready, we figure out the next step together. She looked at me carefully. Together? She repeated. Yes, I said, but not the way it was before. She nodded. This time, she understood. Days later, when she was discharged, she came home with me, not as someone returning to comfort, but as someone starting over. It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations, uncomfortable truths, moments where old patterns tried to come back. But each time we caught them, we paused. We chose differently. Leo came back into my life slowly. The first time I held him, truly held him, he looked at me with wide, curious eyes before resting his head against my shoulder as if it had always belonged there. And my hands, they were steady. They had always been steady.
But now, so was I.
Months passed, then a year. Life didn't return to what it was. It became something else. Something healthier. Something real. Amelia found work again, not in the high-pressure world she once chased, but in something simpler, something that gave her balance instead of stress. She learned to stand on her own, not because she had to, but because she finally understood why it mattered. And me, I didn't disappear into her life again. I stayed present, but whole. One evening, as we sat together watching Leo play on the floor, Amelia turned to me and said quietly, I didn't lose you. I just had to learn how to see you. I smiled, and for the first time, that felt like enough.